Broadcasting from the Community Service Radio Studio at the Pop Music Academy in Sellersburg, Indiana, welcome to Dangerous Subversive Radio. Prepare to open your mind and question everything. Hello, you've come back for episode 3. I wish I could give you some good news, but things are awful.
Oh, come on, man.
Our world is full of crime, pollution, global warming, greed, corruption, pants being worn below the butt, and the government should do something about it. Why? Why the government? Why should we look to the government to solve these problems any more than we look to our dentist or the guy who collects our garbage once a week? Well, to dive into that, you got to take a look at what our government is and who our government is. So let's do a thought experiment. If the United States of America were an elementary school, who would the government be? That's easy, right? The principal. No. If you look at our government as it was designed for us, and the government was sticking to those 18 things that it's authorized to do in the Constitution, then its proper place in our elementary school metaphor would be the custodian. You know, the guy who keeps the heat going, the guy who cleans the floors, makes sure all the light bulbs are changed, makes sure the locks are working, and then stays the heck out of the way so that the people for whom the school actually exists, the students, can get on with the purpose for which the school was actually built, learning. But what if the government took it upon himself to make sure you come to school, came up with incredibly complicated ways to do incredibly simple things like multiply two numbers together, decided that you don't need to learn stuff like spelling, that you do need to learn in elementary school, and things like there's 54 different genders, and if you prefer one over another, you're transphobic. And what if you made sure that any dodgeball game that broke out on the playground, that no score is kept, because it might deplete your self-esteem if you lose? And by the way, do you honestly think those kids aren't keeping score? Again, we're learning that there's not men and women. There's girls with junk, and there's guys who are in the wrong body. And, okay. So what if you headed back into the lunchroom and made sure that you had enough lunch money, and that if you didn't, that other children's lunch money was taken from them and given to you? And if you happened to nibble your Pop-Tart into something vaguely resembling a gun, that you are immediately expelled for terroristic threatening? And if you happen to give one of your classmates a peck on the cheek, you are expelled for sexual harassment. And by the way, there is no picture there for a reason, because try as you might, you cannot find a picture of two grade schoolers kissing each other. And at this point, I only hope I haven't been placed on some federal list of suspected pedophiles. Okay, so if the janitor, the custodian, took it upon himself to do all of that, how many of us would not say that this is an outrageous case of custodian overreach? Now you see where I'm going with this. But the fact is, you may not even see the custodian on any given day, and you're certainly not preoccupied day in and day out and worrying about what he does. Well, that's the role that the federal government is supposed to play in our lives. They do those 18 things, they stay out of the way, and we get on with the business of running this country. It is not the government that runs this country. Last time there was a government showdown, or not showdown, government shutdown. 3 days into it, I was talking to a coworker, and they hadn't even realized it had happened. What does that tell you? Okay, but isn't it their job? Isn't it the government's job to take care of us? Well, we're going to extend this metaphor a little more. Now, forget the school metaphor. We're heading off on another tangent. I'm going to put out a screamer alert here. All you screamers, get ready, because we all know that whoever screams the loudest is right. Okay, here goes. If you are an adult and you live in a free country, it is not the government's job to take care of you. It's your job to take care of you. If you're a child, then of course it's your parents' job to take care of you. If you are an adult and you are not able to take care of yourself, it is your family's job to take care of you. If for some reason neither you nor your family are able to take care of you, ideally in this country, it is your church's job to take care of you. Oh, well, that's it then. You want us all to live in a theocracy, right? The First Amendment protects us from people like you. You know what? If you don't go to church, just skip this step and we'll move on. Theocracy. Okay. If neither you nor your family nor your church are able to take care of you, it is your community's job to take care of you. If for some inexplicable reason neither you, nor your family, nor your church, nor your job are able to take care of you, it is your state's job to take care of you. And if for some absolutely outlandish, inexplicable, unforeseeable reason neither you, nor your family, nor your church, nor your job, nor your state are able to take care of you, well, okay, then should there be some federal safety nets? Of course there should. But if you went to a circus and the acrobat's entire act consisted of falling into the safety net, how good an acrobat is it? And would you go back to that circus? Okay, we're heading off on a tangent here, but stay with me. We'll be right back, and you'll be glad we did. A doctor. A doctor must earn an undergraduate degree, then in pre-med, then do another 4 years of med school, then do another 3 to 7 years of residency before he is granted a license to practice medicine. A lawyer must have an undergraduate degree in the area in which they wish to specialize in law. Then get into law school and earn a Juris Doctor degree, law degree. Then pass the bar exam before they are granted a license to practice law. An airline pilot must pass a commercial pilot certification course in which he studies weather, aerodynamics, airplane systems, airspace designations, federal aviation regulations, and then pass an ATP knowledge and practical flight test. They must also accumulate 1,500 hours of flight time, 200 of which is cross-country, 100 of which is nighttime, 75 hours of instrument time, 50 hours of which must be multi-engine time, before he's granted a license to carry people in an airliner. A civil engineer must pass a 4-year degree in which he studies science, math, physics, static and fluid dynamics before even applying for a license to practice as a civil engineer. A nurse must pass a 2 or 4-year course in which they study anatomy, physiology, microbiology, nutrition, ethics, among a bunch of other subjects before they can be granted a license to practice as a nurse. A truck driver must hold a CDL learner's permit for a designated period of time and then pass a practical and knowledge test which covers vehicle inspections, road tests, and basic controls. Then they must earn additional endorsements if they want to drive a truck that's carrying a double trailer, has a tank, is carrying hazardous material, or a passenger vehicle before they are granted a license to drive commercially. A politician has to get them to vote, has to get you to vote for them. And yet, they would have us believe that they are uniquely qualified to solve all of our problems for us. And it's not that's a bad thing that we elect people out of our citizenry to help run the government, but there's also an inherent danger in it. This is how we get people like Sheila Jackson Lee, who once asked NASA officials if the Mars rovers had ever ventured over to take a picture of the American flag that the astronauts left there. She also identified homicide as a major source of murders. And evidently before she was elected, she was a slave. And by the way, she thinks the Constitution was written 400 years ago. We also get people like Joe Barton, Republican from Texas, who once told the House Energy Subcommittee that the wind is a finite resource. And if we try to harness the wind, it will slow the wind down. And of course, that will make the temperature go up. And last but not least, we get people like Hank Johnson, Democrat from Georgia, who once expressed concern to high-ranking Navy officials that if too many naval personnel were stationed on the island of Guam, the island might tip over and capsize. Now, of course, that's not to say that there aren't some really, really sharp, good people in our Congress. Two of my favorites are Trey Gowdy and Rand Paul. But there's a fundamental difference between them and those other guys. A difference they share with people like George Washington, who, by the way, we might ask, he was a farmer. What makes him qualified to solve our nation's problems? John Adams was also a farmer. He was a lawyer, but also a farmer. What makes him more qualified than Sheila Jackson Lee to solve our problems? Thomas Jefferson was an inventor, among many other things. He was a writer, a statesman, an inventor, a scientist. But still, what sets him apart? What makes him more qualified than Hank Johnson or Joe Barton to save our nation's problems? Well, the difference is, it's a trick question. These guys didn't try. They did not look to government to solve all the people's problems. They understood that government should stick to those few things that the government does well and stay out of the American people's business. Okay? So we look at the politicians of today and what makes them qualified at all to solve our problems. Well, they can pass laws. Well, can laws solve problems? What laws actually do is they attempt to make millions of people behave in a certain way. But does that, if laws solved problems, then no one would ever be murdered. There are laws in all 50 states against murder. No one would be trafficking in drugs. Trafficking in drugs is a federal offense. No one would ever be kidnapped. There are laws against kidnapping. No one would ever exceed the speed limit. There are laws against that. No one would ever buy a 32-ounce soda in New York City. Well, wait a minute. That's one they can actually enforce. So, why do laws get made? The only thing laws do, the only thing they actually really do, is punish the people who break them. I've often said to my son, there can be two reasons why something would be illegal. Either it's inherently dangerous or evil, or someone went and made a law against it. Well, let me tell you, I think we took care of most of the evil and dangerous things a long time ago. Those are very basic laws. So why do laws get passed today? Well, the main reason laws get passed is to give someone an advantage over someone else. And who might that someone be? It's the guy who bought your congressman. The guy who had enough money to take him out to dinner, to send him on cruises, to schmooze him until he passed a law that gives this guy an advantage. And you say, well, that's just corruption. I mean, it's going to happen once in a while. No, corruption is what happens when a small number of people have power over the lives of a large number of people. Corruption is not something that inadvertently and inexplicably happens to a government. Corruption is in the very nature of government. It is in the very DNA of government. If you don't believe me, try and name me one single government anywhere around the world that has always been perfectly free of corruption. You cannot find them. So, the best we can hope for is to keep corruption to a minimum. And how do we do that? By keeping the government to a minimum. That's why Thomas Jefferson said, "That governs best which governs least." But if not the government, then who? Who shall we look to solve the problems of our society? Well, here's an absolutely insane, outlandish, off-the-wall idea. How about us? Name any innovation that makes people's lives better, generally over time. Advances in agriculture and transportation and medicine. Innovations that make water cleaner, that give us air conditioning. Just about any science or technology that makes people's lives better. Now, how many of them were invented by the government? And you might say, well, what about really big challenges, like putting men on the moon? Okay, let's look at that. The lunar module was built by Grumman Aircraft, a private corporation. The Command Service Module was built by North American Aviation, a private corporation. The Saturn V rocket was built by a consortium of Boeing, Grumman Aircraft, North American Aviation, and IBM, every single one of them a private corporation. Yeah, but you say, but the government had to get them all together and coordinate them and direct them all. So the government's a vital part of it too. Well, I'll tell you, a few years ago, someone asked Barack Obama when NASA was going to get us back to the moon. And you know what he told him? He said, "We can't do that right now. We don't have the technology." So we had the technology in 1969, but we don't have it now? Meanwhile, looks like the first people to Mars just might be SpaceX, a totally private corporation. Now, the government does not innovate. The government steps in and regulates innovation. And when they do, we get $900 hammers and $3,000 toilet seats and $30,000 washers. Obamacare was partially going to be funded by a medical device tax. They were going to tax innovation in new medical devices and instruments. Somebody evidently forgot to tell them that what you subsidize, you get more of, and what you tax, you get less of. So it's all built on the idea that people are stupid and helpless and need to be taken care of. But I don't believe that. I believe that people are smart and capable. One of my favorite TV commentators, John Stossel, once said, "If you leave people alone, they will solve most of their own problems." And I'll give you a great example of this. Several years ago, an experiment was done in Africa. The men running the experiment took 2 boxes full of tablet computers into 2 villages in Ethiopia. They set them down in the village. No teachers, no instructions, just put the sealed box there and stepped away and then surreptitiously observed what went on. You must keep in mind, this was in a place where there was no written language. People had never even seen road signs before, never even seen packaging with printed materials on it. Okay? Within 4 minutes, the children of the village had unsealed the package, taken the computers out, found the on switch, and powered them up. Within 5 days, and this is all documented, you can research this yourself and find out exactly what I'm telling you. Within 5 days, the children of this village were using 47 apps per child per day. Within 5 days, within 2 weeks, the children of the village were singing the ABC song. And within 5 months, they had hacked Android. Let that sink in. Now, if children in a village in Africa can do this, do we really need the government of the United States to solve our problems for us? In my never-to-be-humble opinion, the answer is no. The government should stick to those 18 things that they do best, that they're authorized to do by the Constitution, and then stay the heck out of our way. Once again, we see the book, Dangerous Subversive Heresies. If you like the kind of information you've gotten tonight, you're going to like this book. Not only does it give you this kind of information, not only does it delve into the nooks and crannies of subjects, but it is fun to read. I have heard that from almost everyone who has read it. I have a young friend, a co-worker of mine, who called it a page turner. So check it out. Dangerous Subversive Heresies, available on Amazon.com. Well, that's going to wrap it up for episode number 3. I hope you come back next week. I hope you bring some friends. I hope you grow to be 100 million strong. But right now, I hope you have a good night. Good night.